Hello students, I hope you are all fine and in good health. As I told that in my final audio presentation, I will discuss the final portion of this particular chapter. So let me start it. I have already discussed up to this part. I'm repeating that particular dialogue, or rather to say that particular line. Well, Mr. Tedder, what do you think you can do to me? It fled and I swam on. So, but finally, it seems that he was not at all scared, not at all scared of the fear or the terror. They used to appear and reappear sometimes in the middle, in the middle of the ocean while he was swimming. But finally, he drove those things away. Now, let me move on to the next paragraph. As I told you that in this audio presentation, I will complete the entire chapter, the remaining part of the chapter, the final climax. So let me continue. Yet I had residual doubts. Now, residue is something that is at the bottom. Residue means something that is at the bottom, that stays at the bottom. So it is miniature. Residual doubts means little doubts, we can say. A very little doubt I had. At my first chance, actually opportunity, there is another synonym that can be associated with this is chance. At my first opportunity, I hurried west, went up the Teton to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to the Meade Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of the warm lake. So he still had a bit of residual doubts, a little doubt in his mind, and as a result, to overcome that, as a result, to see it whether he is 100% capable of swimming wherever, in whichever place he might select, he decided to move up to the west. And where he went to Teton, or rather to say, went up the Teton to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Meade Glacier. So he went to all these places. Obviously, he went these places to learn, to see whether he can totally swim without any fear or not. So it's an experiment he did. He traveled also on his own. He did swimming and trekking on his own. The next morning, I encamped in the high meadow by the side of the warm lake. He camped near the side, you can say, see, it is written, encamped in the high meadow by the side of the warm lake. He camped all alone. As I told you, that he decided to be 100% confirmed that whether he is capable of swimming and whether he can swim without any fear or not, whether he is totally capable of that or not. The next morning, I stripped, dived into the lake, and swam across the other shore and back, just as Dog Capron used to do. Now, obviously, Dog Capron is the name of an ace swimmer. So he performed some of the techniques, that he improvised some of the techniques also, and performed some of the techniques that was previously been performed by the ace swimmer by the name of Dog Capron. And finally he was successful, and it was a eureka moment for William Douglas, because it is written, I shouted with joy, I screamed with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned the echo. And obviously he was all alone in the midst of a lake and meadows and mountains. So obviously when he shouted, it echoed back to him, I had conquered my fear of water. Finally, he came to the final conclusion that he had conquered his fear of water. The experience has a deep meaning for me, as only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can appreciate. Now, the experience, this entire experience, it had a deeper meaning for William. Why? Because now this is a situation, or his experience is something that only he is saying that only those who have faced fear or terror like him in reality, only they can experience his fear actually. Now it is very difficult to explain to others. Only those who had a similar sort of terrifying experience like him, only they can actually understand, or they can actually feel what he felt. There is terror only in the fear of death, as Roosevelt knew when he said, and here I quote, all we have to fear is fear itself. Now, if we can drove that fear out of our mind, then practically we become fearless. So only one thing we have to fear, as President Roosevelt told, is fear itself. So if we can drive out that fear from our mind, then practically there is no more fear left. Then we became totally courageous. Because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce. So he actually faced both the situations. On one hand, he faced the sensation of dying. He was on the verge of death in the swimming pool. It was a near death experience. Luckily, he was saved from the jaws of death, as we know, while he was in a troublesome situation. It was a pathetic situation for him inside the swimming pool at the very beginning stage of his swimming career in the YMCA swimming pool, as we know by this time. So I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce. The will to live somehow grew in intensity, and obviously, and finally, his triumphant victory over terror. Now, it was a sensational experience. It was an experience that it is very hard for him to describe or express beyond words, and only those people who had same feelings and like him, they can only appreciate his intensity and his strong desire and finally his victory over terror. Now, as he told that it is not possible for everyone to feel it unless and until if someone is experienced with it, then only they can feel what actually went through him. So I repeat, because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew in intensity. The will, the desire grew in me a lot. At last, I felt released. Released in the sense that he had finally overcome the fear of death. He felt relieved. He felt released also at the same time. Free to walk the trials and climb the peaks and to brush aside fear. Now, not only that, he did a bit of mountaineering, trekking also, and he went on swimming, as we know. So finally, he became a courageous man, liberated one, free from the fear, free from hydrophobia, that fear that troubled his youth, that troubled the middle part of his life in his middle age, but finally he overcame that one. And at last, he felt that eureka moment, or he felt relieved, free to walk the trials and climb the peaks. And he went on mountaineering also. He did a bit of mountaineering also. And finally, he was totally successful in brushing aside the fear, or we can say eliminating or driving out the fear all by himself. It was a rigorous moment. So finally, we can say, despite at the very beginning, as we find that he was incapable of swimming and he had that fear, but rigorous training, patience, hard work, obviously a big credit goes to the swimming instructor that he appointed, who personally trained him, and finally he brushed aside all the fear. He went to many islands, he went to many meadows, and he went on swimming in various places in order to drive out the residual amount of fear left in him. But finally he was successful, finally he was triumphant, and finally he totally brushed aside all the fears that is related with hydrophobia or fear of water. And finally it was a big victory on his part, because though at the very beginning we get to know that he had hydrophobia, but at the last stage of this chapter, the penultimate stage, he had no more fear of water at all. So dear students, there I end this chapter. Please kindly go through it, go through this audio presentation, and if there is any doubt, let me know. Thank you, students. Thank you all.